the first page, which has English on it and questions. As I mentioned in my little voice note to you, this, which we're going to share with you over the next couple of weeks, I would imagine, is a panorama overview, a very deep understanding of, I use the word evolution, the evolution within Torah, as it were, as the world evolves towards its ultimate destination and the purpose for which it was created to begin with. Let's begin. So it starts off, you see, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet. There are 4 questions. Let's have a look at them. Stira b'divrei Rabbi Yochanan, there's a contradiction between the words of Rabbi Yochanan in Masechta Nida, as opposed to what is stated in Masechta Sanhedrin. What's the contradiction? On the surface. In Masechta Nida, Rabbi Yochanan said, it's quoted there, MITZVOS betelos la'osid lavai. In the future, after Mashiach comes, there is no longer any mitzvahs. And that's why he says, it's permissible to bury someone in tachrichim, in shrouds that are made of shatnas. Now, while the person is dead, obviously it's not a problem, because while the person is dead, he's not observing mitzvahs, which is the reason, by the way, we go to a cemetery, we cover our tzitzis, etc. We are not to, it's called loig l'rosh, make fun of the poor ones. We do mitzvahs and you don't. So we cover our tzitzis. We don't go with tefillin in a cemetery. So that's not the problem. The problem is, but what about Tchias HaMesim, right? The final destination is that when the dead are revived, which I make reference to many times every day, and the dead person is going to get up in shrouds of shatnas, of woolen linen. One may not wear woolen linen. So Rabbi Yochanan said it's not a problem, because there's no mitzvahs then. Okay? So he says there's no mitzvahs, losit lavai, and hence, mutter, it's permissible to bury a person in tachrichim of kilayim of shatnas. Yet, he says in Masechta Sanhedrin as follows. It's not in your text, I'm going to explain it to you. In Masechta Sanhedrin, Rabbi Yochanan is quoted with the following teaching. He says, where do we see in the Torah itself Tchias HaMesim, the revival of the dead? It's not stated, obviously. So where do we see it? There are a number of hints. One, for example, is, we're going to read it in a few minutes. Every day we quote the Shira, the song that the Jews sang when they crossed the Red Sea. It begins with these words, Oz then, Yoshir Moishe v'nei Yisrael, Moishe and the Yidden will sing. It's the future tense. They will sing? No, they did sing. And we don't find anywhere till the end of the book that they sang again. So here's an allusion. They sang in the past, but we're also alluding to a future song, Tchias HaMesim. Okay, that's one allusion. Rabbi Yochanan is a very fascinating one. The Torah says that Truma, what's Truma? Truma is an unspecified amount of the farmer's produce. Our sages gave ratios, 1 in 50, 1 in 60, 1 in 40, 50 is medium, 1 in 40 is generous, 1 in 60 is miserly. So the Torah says you should give it, the Truma, to Aaron the Kohen. Says Rabbi Yochanan, Truma is given to Aaron? Does he live forever? They're in the desert. These laws only kick in when we go to Eretz Yisrael. He did not go into Israel. And the pasuk says, "Unesatem esat truma la'Aaron HaKohen." So here is an allusion for the revival of the dead, and then you'll give it to him. But what do we see from there? That not only is there going to be a revival of the dead Tchias HaMesim, but we're going to be doing mitzvahs. We glean from that statement that not just Tchias HaMesim. A second fact, there'll be mitzvahs observed. I'm going to give him truma. It's an outright contradiction. In Masechta Nida, he said, you can bury someone in shrouds of shatnas because mitzvahs betelis lasad lavi. Rabbi Yochanan said that. There's no mitzvahs in the future. The same Rabbi Yochanan says there are mitzvahs. Contradiction. Second question, it's the same question, but not in the Gemara, but in Halacha. Beis. Stire bedivrei harambam in Halacha. In Seif Hilchos Megillah, the end of the laws of the Megillah, the Rambam says, famous statement quoting from the Rishalmi. When Mashiach comes, he says, Nevi'im and Ksuvim, these writings become obsolete. It's not on your text, friends. I'm giving all this information. All these writings become obsolete. Nevi'im and Ksuvim. For the obvious reason, we don't need David the Melech is crying out to God in distress, and the prophets are chastising the people and rebuking them. Don't need their message anymore. The perfect world, enemies are defeated. We don't need that anymore. But the Gemara says, the Rambam quotes the Halacha, the 5 books of Chumash are forever, and the Megillah. Of all of the Nevi'im, Ksuvim, of the rest of Scripture, of the only Nevi'im. And it'll be forever, just like, quote, Halachas shel Torah shebal peh, the laws of the Torah as articulated in the oral law. We don't know what the laws are reading the Chumash, as they're articulated in the Halacha, she'einam betelim lo'olam. They're forever. So the Rambam says, quote, really, like it's the second quote of Rabbi Yochanan, that mitzvahs are forever, the Megillah is forever, and Chamish are the 5 books of the Torah forever. But yet he says in Hilchos Kiloyim, but in the laws of Shatnez, of wool and linen, he says, Muter lasis min ha-kiloyim tachlichim lemeis, you're allowed to make from the forbidden mixture of wool and linen shrouds tachichim for the dead. Well, that implies then that mitzvahs are not, he's going to get up with his shrouds. So if you just learn that, you will conclude that mitzvahs are not forever. That contradicts what he says in Hilchos Megillah. So it's the same contradiction. First in the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, and the same contradiction in the Halacha, the Rambam. Question number 3. Let's just take the one position, the one statement that Halacha is forever. Wait a minute. Im Halacha she'Torah shebal peh einam betelim lo'olam. If the halachas are forever, hayitachin shelo sidlo v'yishtan halacha k'beishamai. The Arizal says, when Mashiach comes, halacha will be like Beishamai. So it's a change in halacha. Let me give you the background of the Arizal statement. The Arizal statement is a commentary in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, what's a machlokes? Let's take this. Machlokes, which is not l'shem shamayim, an argument where it's not for the sake of heaven, but personal agenda, in the end, will not endure. There'll be a disastrous ending. And the classic example is Kairach, last week's Torah portion. What's a machlokes that is l'shem shamayim, and it's forever, and endures? That's machlokes of Shammai and Hillel. That's an example of an argument for the sake of heaven. So the Rizal asks, but it doesn't endure because the halacha is like Hillel, not Shammai. Shammai is dismissed. So he answers the famous answer that no, it's not. Because when Mashiach will come, we're going to observe the halacha like the school of Shammai in all of their arguments. That's the Rizal's answer. We now have a question. The Rambam says, and one of the quotes of Rabbi Yochanan is that halacha doesn't change. It does. Till now, the ruling is like Hillel. Then the ruling is going to be like Shammai. Now, in brackets, I add that Ein Kushe Chazak is such a strong question. Why is it not such a strong question? Because the subject of the halacha doesn't change, just the way you do it. The subject, whatever they're arguing about, will still be. You light the menorah this way, light the menorah that way, it's going to change. But the general halacha, you have to light the menorah, is not going to change. So it isn't such a strong question. But the Rebbe ask another question, which is more like an emotional question. It doesn't seem fair. For thousands of years, the Yidden observing halacha like the school of Hillel. And we have a principle that says when it comes to holiness, we've got to go higher and higher. Comes to Mashiach comes, Hillel is over, now we're going to do it like Shammai. What happened to Hillel's opinion that was observed for thousands of years, rejected? Something's missing here. So that's a question that's going to be addressed as well. And now the strongest question. And I'll ask you not to read it. Okay, I'll read it inside, but The first question is now taking the other view, which we have to reconcile, which we have not. How could we even entertain such a notion? How could there even be such a position that mitzvahs should be nullified in the future? Mitzvahs are eternal. Now comes the elaboration of this question. Let's read it in the text together and I will elaborate. This is a very, very critical understanding, what's following now. Before we read, I just want to tell you, I sometimes ask people this question. Why does God exist? And incredibly, people will start to give me an answer. God exists because. Oh, really? If God exists because, then forget the God you're worshiping and worship the reason, because that's why he's there. Of course, it's a nonsensical question. It's a nonsensical question to begin with, because God doesn't exist for a reason. He is, period, for eternal. He created reasons. He's utterly beyond it. There's no reason for God's existence. The best we can say is he is because he is. Not something else. That's why he's there. That's ludicrous and nonsense. What are we saying now? We're saying that mitzvahs, at their core, are the expression of him, and they're beyond reason at their core. You hear, friends? Mitzvahs at their core are pure godliness beyond agenda and a reason, not in order to anything. That's the external dimension of mitzvahs. That's not the essence of it. Let's see some detail. As Hashem exists beyond for no reason, justification, not as a means, in Hebrew, emtsoi, to an en chas v'shalom. God doesn't exist for something, God forbid, then he's not God. You got the wrong address. So is true, the same is true of the etzem, the essence of Torah mitzvahs. Why? Because Hashem invested of himself in Torah mitzvahs. That's what their core is. They're not agendas at their core. They're simply the expressions of him. As the Gemara says in Shabbos, we've learned this before, the Gemara in Shabbos asks, why in heaven's name would the first word of the Ten Commandments not be in Hebrew? Ani Hashem Elokecha. That's how it should have begun. It didn't. It begins with Anochi, which is actually Egyptian. The Gemara answers, because Anochi stands for 4 words. Ana nafshi ksavis yehavis. I, myself, wrote it, gave it. Explains the Baal Shem Tov. Well, of course. Who else gave it? The deeper meaning of this statement is, God is saying, Ana I, nafshi myself, ksavis I wrote myself and gave myself in Torah. So therefore, just like I am because I am, Torah mitzvahs are because they're expressions of me, and they transcend reasons and agendas. Now you're going to be sitting and thinking, what are you saying? There's millions of incredible reasons and explanations. I've got a whole library next door, in the next room, and there's tens of thousands of more books. What's all that? It's all explaining what mitzvahs achieve and accomplish. Answer, let's continue reading. In other words, the reasons for mitzvahs on all 4 levels of what we've learned in the past, pshat, remez, drush, and sod, the simple meaning, the illusions, the homiletic and the mystical, which correspond to the 4 worlds of Atzilus, Brit, Tzir, Asiyah, which correspond to the 4 letters of God's name, and so on. Namely, so that's taka true. Their mitzvahs as a means, tool to an end. What's the means? Just to refine ourselves in the world. Our sages say very explicitly, mitzvahs were given to refine us and to refine the world. True, but that is all the external aspect of the mitzvah. And true, at some point, Tchias HaMesim, the perfect world, when the dead are resurrected, there'll be no reason anymore for mitzvahs, because the refinement, the end will have been achieved. True, the reasons are no longer. In order to make you a better person, you already are, thank God now, at the end of the line, a better person. You're finally a mensch. Now what? So what's mitzvahs now? But the essence, the etzem, just like Hashem himself, is forever. Beyond purpose, reason, accomplishment, etc. So now we're asking, so how can we say mitzvahs betelis lasid lavai? How could there even be such a position that mitzvahs will be nullified? It's like saying God is nullified. So what does this mean? So aside from the contradiction, in one place Rabbi Yochanan says this, in the other place he says that. In one place the Rambam says it is, and he says it's not. How could we even consider just taking this position that they're nullified? How could that be? Not so. They're forever and eternal, like God is. Are we clear on the question? Now the essence of the answer will begin now, and then you see these charts that follow, and we're going to look at all of history. It's absolutely fascinating, and will change the way you see the world and yourself and God. Okay, so I guess we'll just read the text and then I'll explain it. This is the essence of the answer. Answers to not the third question, but this first, the second, and the fourth. The answer to the third question about Shammai and Hillel and so on will be explained subsequently. Mitzvahs beteilus lasid lavai. What does the statement mean that mitzvahs, commandments, will no longer be in the future? It means the need to command, tzivui, at some point, namely Tchias HaMesim, when the dead are revived, ceases to be. Because then the person, and through him the world, have been totally refined. The world will then be completely bottled, which means nullified, and mavura, refined, and one with Hashem. There'll be no gap between Hashem and a person that needs to be bridged by communicated command. Then indeed, there's no reasons for the mitzvahs. But they still remain, because their essence, like Hashem, is beyond reason and therefore eternal. Then without the need to command, the Ratzon Hashem, the will of God, happens b'derech hamela, naturally, organically. Conclusion? The halacha b'peil, the actual halacha, therefore remains forever. Halacha shotere shebal peh eina b'teil l'olam. Let me explain. What did we just say now? What does it mean that the mitzvahs are nullified? It doesn't mean they're not going to be tefillin anymore. It means the need to tell you to put them on. That's going to be nullified. The mitzvah as in the commandment. When we say commandment, we say this, that means three things. There's one, a command, the one who's commanding to, and the specifics of what to do. No longer, because we're not separate from God. We're one with Him, the world is one with Him, and organically and naturally and instinctually, a Jew will put on tefillin and keep mitzvahs. There's no need for the mitzvah part, the commandment component. This is similar to what our sages say. The Mashiach comes, in theory, if a person will want on Shabbos to take a fig, pluck it from a tree, the tree will say, it's Shabbos, you can't do that. The world organically is in sync with God and His will. It will not be possible to do otherwise. That's the meaning of mitzvahs are no longer. It doesn't mean the actual observance. It means the need to command it. So without commanding it, we will just naturally, the world organically and naturally do the will of God. The halacha therefore remains. The halacha means, will it be observed? But not in the classic way where there's me, there's God, He told me, I got a choice yes to or no to, and I choose yes to. That's over. That's over. We have transcended our choice. It's freedom from choosing. That's the biggest free choice. We have chosen not to choose anymore because we will have refined ourselves through all of the mitzvahs down through all the millennia and so on and so forth. And we're at a level where we're just one with Hashem. You don't have to tell me. I'm so one with you. I feel your will and organically it happens. That's what's going to go. But will the actual halacha remain? The answer is yes. Are we clear? We're clear? So what's going to be nullified? Not going to be tefillin? Not going to be Shabbos? Not going to be matzah on Pesach? Of course there will be. So what does it mean there's no more mitzvahs? Won't have to tell you to. Mitzvah commandment. The halacha will just be organically. We're one with God. It's like in a marriage where you finally get to the point, I don't have to tell you what I want. We are so one. You just feel it and you do it naturally. There's no resistance. There's no resistance. So therefore, till that time, all the reasons of the mitzvahs are to refine us. It's to get us to the point to overcome resistance so they don't have to be told anymore. And it'll happen organically. So that part, all the reasons and agendas to make me a mensch, refine me and inspire me and bring me closer and refine, done. Those components of the mitzvahs are over. What's left? The relationship, the oneness, and not the need to tell you, the need to have to tell me or you to do it. Are we clear? That's gone. Okay, so we'll stop here. You just look over the page, the next page, you'll see. We'll go through now all of history, a lot of detail, explaining the whole evolution of life from the beginning, since the Torah was given even before that, and how we are evolving to the various stages to the ultimate union with God. I don't have to tell you, we are so one, you naturally express what I want. And what I want isn't agenda. What I want is to be part of your life. Much profound nuance and detail coming, God willing, next week. Stay tuned.